For more on what a second Trump term means for Asia in particular, we're joined now by Chong Ja Ian, his Associate Professor of Political Science at the National University of Singapore. Professor Chong, thank you very much for talking to us. Let's start with Trump's to-do list. We know it's huge, and probably dominated, if you like, by his domestic agenda as he sets out to remake U.S. politics. There's two wars we just heard about to handle as well. Is Asia even in the top 5 of his priorities, you think?
Oh, sure. I mean, the bit about tariffs against the PRC against China, China's clearly in Asia. So that's one of the top priorities for Trump. And I guess from there, we will also be looking at what the follow-on effects would be on for U.S. allies in Asia, notably South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Australia. And so in that regard, that's one set of issues. Then the other is if you look at Trump has also shown himself to be very skeptical of international institutions and international law. And one of those things that I suppose is a guardrail in Asia are things like the law of the sea and things like that. So if those things get put under pressure, if the WTO gets put under pressure more, I mean, these will have clear ramifications for Asia as well.
Prof. Chong, we understand, it's been reported anyway, that President Xi Jinping has called Trump to congratulate him. Not clear what they said at this point, but we also know that Beijing has called for a peaceful coexistence. So is the possibility of a reset with China possible at all under Trump 2.0?
So this sort of idea of peaceful coexistence, of a more stable U.S. PRC relationship has been floated before. I suppose it comes down to what Beijing means this time. Previously, they've articulated an idea that the U.S. Influence goes up to the middle of the Pacific, Guam, so on, and everything 2 points west should come under some sort of sphere of influence by Beijing. So it comes down to a question of whether Trump is willing to accept that, and also the other actors in the region, how they wish to live with or contend or respond to such a potential situation. So there's a lot of moving parts, but the sort of principle of peaceful coexistence is one that is relatively easy to put forward. It's the devil is really in the details.
Sure is, Professor. And as we expect Trump's America First foreign policy, I wonder what this means for China's influence in the region. Could this policy making give China sort of a leg up in Asia, similar to what happened back in 2017 when Mr. Trump withdrew the U.S. from the TPP, allowing Beijing to introduce RCEP?
So, well, RCEP wasn't introduced by Beijing; it was introduced by ASEAN. Beijing supported it. So, what we could see is that Beijing would try to make use of the space that has opened up to push for its view of an economic order. But that having been said, 2016 and 2024 are not the same, meaning to say that 2016 there was a lot more hope that the PRC and also Europe, for that matter, would be more open to trade, to economic liberalization. That has proven not to be the case so much. Beijing is focused more on its dual circulation, in part because it also needs to boost its own economy, so it's more domestically focused. It is more concerned about protecting its own economy as well. So too for Europe. So in that situation, the sort of place where the rest of Asia sits is far less perhaps comfortable and far less familiar than it was in 2016. It's a far more protectionist world today than before.
And how do you see the two men handling Taiwan? I ask you because of obviously the current issues that the current Biden administration has had over the island, but there's also a new man, Wang Huning, whom Xi has entrusted to handle Taiwan. This man firmly believes in the dominance of the Communist Party. So, is that clash, first of all, between communism and U.S. democratic ideals going to be a problem? And do you see a way forward on this issue of Taiwan?
So I think we should not forget Taiwan's agency in this. I don't think, if you look at opinion polls on Taiwan, 88% of people there want the status quo. So they're going to push back against what people like Wang Huning are trying to advance. Now, Wang, of course, I don't think wants to actually use force. He's going to use coercion. He's probably going to try to influence Taiwan's politics domestically. So a lot of that is on Taiwan, but to the extent that this will butt up against U.S. interests, notably in terms of semiconductors, and so other kinds of U.S. commitments to perhaps having a stronger role in the region of, I guess, whatever vestige of U.S. primacy that's left, that could set Beijing and Washington up for some friction over Taiwan. But a lot will come down to Taiwan. A lot will also come down to regional actors like Japan, like the Philippines.
And Professor, what should then countries or territories like Taiwan that rely on Washington for defense do? I mean, should they make a case early to Trump that the country or the state is a reliable partner and worthy of his attention? Because I understand South Korean President Yoon is already on the phone call with the President-elect Trump.
Right. So for Taiwan, they would have to sort of show several things. Trump has said that they need to pay more for their own defense. So Taiwan will have to demonstrate that they are taking on the responsibilities for their defense a lot more. They are already, but I think that needs to be more demonstrated. And at the same time, perhaps to buy more from the United States to show that Taiwan is a valuable, in a very literal sense, partner, and also to invest in the United States. So they probably have to move in those directions and convince the Trump administration and also Congress, where they do have a lot of friends, that continued support and continued cooperation with Taiwan would be useful. But I do have to say that for Taiwan, the fact that it is not in many international institutions does mean that it has a little bit of a different kind of buffer, unexpectedly, as compared to other states.
And Professor, despite his isolationist instincts, we know that Trump has sometimes resorted to personal bonds and complex diplomacy, like his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un or Russia's Vladimir Putin. Should it be expected that he could continue to pursue those personal diplomacy?
So Trump has a track record from even before his presidency of looking at personal relationships as important. Yes, Putin and Kim Jong-un, perhaps more so Putin and less so Kim Jong-un, remain important. But I think what we also don't see now was someone like a former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who very early on had reached out to Trump and had very early on established a pretty good personal rapport. And that was useful for getting Trump to be engaged in Asia in a way that was perhaps less disruptive than might have otherwise been. So I guess we're also looking to see whether there are people who can sort of replicate that role in Abe's role in Asia today.
All right, very interesting. Professor Chong, we do have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us on Asia First. That was Chong Ja Ian, Associate Professor of Political Science at the National University of Singapore.